Welcome back to the Intrinsic Minds podcast, where it's about how you think, not what you think. Uh, Today we have we're embarking on a new journey, an old new journey because we've talked about this numerous times, and it's basically on every episode, but we haven't done an episode about it in a very long time, probably about over a year, or I would say a year today, or like closely to mid-May last year. I think that episode on Saturn was done, but we're going to talk about we're going to give our outlook on astrology, our opinions, things we find interesting about it, why it's useful, what's valuable about astrology, and why it is we're so I don't want to use the word attached, but I'll use it. I would say where it's integrated into our the way we see reality in life and how we use it in our own lives as a map and something to utilize as a beautiful and cosmic tool that was handed to us, and how mysterious the origins of astrology is, and how it's there. And then once you start really looking into it, it ends up showing it's how useful it is. It shows itself to you. And so because of this, we want to start really breaking down not only our philosophical implications and how we see it, some of our anecdotal experiences with it, but just why we see the intrinsic value in astrology, and not to sell it to anyone, not to try and push it on anyone, but truly from the heart on why we find astrology a key and useful tool for living. So, Gio, how are we doing today? I won't call you God anymore.
Yeah, right. God forbid. No pun intended. I mean, I definitely, as we've constantly have talked, in our own time and stuff, and even talks that we've been doing on the podcast, but it's just always been very telling that through these in between times, and maybe more so in our research, in our interests that we're looking into and stuff like that, somehow the astrology always plays a factor when we take acknowledgement and have awareness of it, that we always see that it grasps some sort of either direction of an implication of why we are interested in a certain area, why we go into a certain area, how we end up starting to understand it, how we really try to break it down. And there's different it's very multifaceted, the different ways that you can break down a subject or a topic or an area with using the astrology. And with doing that, I think we both feel that it's very valuable in truly getting into that knowing space, even the self-knowing that is necessary in order to kind of have those breakthrough moments with yourself as well too, in those stagnant stages and everything. And I think that's something that I feel has been, most important to me, is in those times of, I mean, hey, we're in retrograde season still, I feel like, in a way. So, that whole needing to revert back, the fuzziness that kind of comes about and stuff like that too, and not knowing what direction, not knowing where your interests are or something, or where you find the light of excitement and shit in your life. It does help. It is a good avenue. It's not a, what do you call that? It's not a trading one thing for another. That's the thing. It's not to just heavily rely on the astrology, but it is always great to be able to take that direction of your perspective, of where you're looking, and look at, maybe the more personal side of astrology when it comes to you and your chart, and how transits could be affecting you and stuff like that, or what type of archetypal roles you're playing by using the astrology to map out maybe some of those, those feelings, those thoughts, those actions, the things that are materializing, whatever it may be, because you get all of those aspects in astrology. Then it kind of helps even get to the core of yourself, what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what you're doing, what you want to do, all those things. And, I think that's kind of how we're going to kind of go into this a little bit more, is just how how it becomes that much more useful and productive. And then, yeah, of course, like, I think there is just still, no matter what, in its popularity and all right now, I still think that astrology does get overlooked in a certain way. There's a lot that doesn't do it justice to. But the more we unravel, history in general, the more we look deeper into those things, the more we look at, the history of astrology, the more you see that it's very, very relevant.
It goes further back than the Bible, and some people attach it to the whole Babylon, right? The Babylonians used it, and God, I feel like there's such a negative energy over that. But like also just the way science has kind of, tried to throw it in the trash and say that it's not useful and that it's pseudoscience and all of that, which is, to me, it's like between the scientific community and even people who see it more as a dark thing, that it's used as a dark thing, witchcraft and stuff like that. There's, we're in a dual universe, right? So it's like, I think it's overlooked because of that. I think it's because we talk about the cheap dopamine hits, right? Like it's you get that dopamine hit, whether it could be on the negative side, whether it's you're looking at it as witchcraft or ritualism and stuff like that, or you're looking at it as like, 17 magazine, you're looking at when you should start dating, what kind of dudes or girls you should date and all that. And like for the women out there who read like the little girly magazines, and like that's like kind of what overshadows astrology, I feel like, right? Like it's either witchcraft or it's teenage girl stuff. But when you do look into what really kind of sucked me in a long time ago, which I've mentioned is Zeitgeist, because I saw the biblical parallels to the stories of, the stories in the Bible and astrological mythologies and archetypal stories like that within the sky. Like it was just like a celestial mirror to the mythologies and the theology of the Bible and stuff like that, whether if it was the ages, the story of Horus and Set being the sun and Saturn, right? And it's just all of these things started playing out. And I'm a pattern guy, and I've emphasized that. And when you see the patterns and you start realizing things are repeated over time, whether it's stories or archetypes, and you realize that astrology came first, and then these things just keep playing out, and you see the signs and symbols constantly pop its way through reality, whether it's you're looking at everyday life. When you're looking at charts, you look at everyday life and you see it, right? Or you're watching, like me and Gio were just saying before we started recording, was, now we watch a movie or we watch a show or we observe things and we see the archetypes and you start seeing them, and it's not pseudoscience, because this is my own anecdotal proof of that, is once I open my eyes to it, it shows itself more. And I know a lot of people that are overly or hyper logical will say the RAS system kicks on and you're looking for it. It's not the truth. And I have so many people vouch that were very hyperlogical that ended up opening their mind to astrology and seeing, oh wow, it's like and I have friends that call me up to say, hey, the universe was talking to me again. These are people that were saying I was brainwashed and that I had, brain damage learning this stuff. I got yelled at for buying $180 books. If he's listening, he knows who that is, who called me out on that. But I bought a book on syncretism for like $180 and I got real deep into it. Well, once I realized, and I've seen this in other people too, once you open the door to this science of synchronicity, as I like to call it, recognizing symbols and archetypes playing out and then them attracting to you, and you actually get to see them play out, that's when it's like you have to open up that door first. And it doesn't really mean you have to open it up and walk through, but you just got to peek in the door. And when you do to astrology, you realize it's not just teenage magazine stuff. It's not just dark rituals and witchcraft and stuff like that. It's actually the science of nature. It's a metaphysical science of consciousness in my eyes. And that's the beauty of it. And then when you realize that this is something that's talking back to you all the time, that it's this living allegory, with that, you start to see the benefit and how you could use it in your own life. And then what that does is also open up the wonder. Oh my God, how is this working? Why is the universe talking to me in symbols and signs? And how astrology is basically the big daddy, the overarching science of synchronicity and archetypes, right? Like you see the astrology everywhere once you have opened up that door and you've opened up your mind to it. For me, it took seeing the biblical thing and how important religion is to people and how people read the Bible and how I've always questioned the Bible. And I said, this doesn't seem literal. I mean, a guy doesn't get swallowed by a fish and he then pukes up and out comes an evangelist. A guy doesn't, like there's all the Jesus and the crucifixion story. Anything that was in that was to me, how do people believe this and not think it's some sort of mythology or there's a whatever deep. And then astrology was that thing. And that's how I ended up into it. And then I got into the horoscopes and they're like, oh, now that it was so important to the Christian and Catholic and all the other religions and stuff like that, and how it paralleled these stories. Oh, well, because it's so important to them and millions and millions and millions of people believe in this stuff and attend a mass every Sunday. And I see that it's in the Bible that, God said, let the stars be for signs. That's what got me. It sucked me in. And that's what got me to open up the door. Everyone's going to be different, of course, but that's what got me. And so seeing it as the science of synchronicity and the science of, or even the art and the imagination of the universe giving you messages through symbols and signs, and it's almost like playing games with you in a way, it becomes so fun. And then you want to look at the horoscopes and say, well, okay, now let me check out my symbols and signs and stuff. What's my allegory? What's my mythology? And then as soon as you get that and you've really started opening your eyes to this isn't just little girl pseudoscience, then you start getting more and more from it. It's like the universe will gift you. And that's what we kind of want to preach a little bit about, is opening your eyes to this and your third eye and your imagination. And this isn't just feminine stuff. This is a masculine tool. Was people like Leonardo da Vinci was an astrologer. If people who wrote the Bible was into astrology, that's men wrote that book, theoretically, I would assume so. Right.
Ptolemy, Pythagoras, all these people, like these are the greatest thinkers and philosophers of all time that we still base a lot of our universal workings on a lot of this stuff too. And it's very relevant how we kind of view things, and just even the implications in universities and stuff too. And that's why it's something that I think a lot of people, when they hear astrology, if this is for people that don't really go into it, I guess, but a lot of people that have taken on more of this side of this interest of it, they do know that there is a deeper history when it comes to astrology. Like they understand that, it was, the zodiac more so, the understanding of it from what we know from history, like that it does come more from around, yes, like you said, the Babylonian period, the 3rd millennium BC and stuff. But it was even before that. But because before the Babylonian period, you had the Akkadians, you had the Sumerians and stuff, and we have plenty of data, plenty of findings to see that it was being used during those times. But not only that, though, in other older cultures, yes, it may not be looked at as exactly the same way, but in a lot of the Oriental cultures, I don't even know if you're allowed to still say Oriental or not, but
I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, right. But they had a certain understanding of the cosmos and a certain divinatory sense to those things. And you know what? Like, let's just be simple. Let's just lay back into it and lay back into maybe this thought frame for a second and kind of try to set aside, the wanting or the needing of all this crazy, wanting to dismiss things based off of what we think is logical and what's not and stuff. But like when you look up, let's just even say during those times when you looked up, right, and you didn't know shit from your ass about what you were looking up at into this vast, deep sky where all this shit is just occurring overhead to you. And there's just, there's all these different stars and you see these patterns and you start seeing these shapes. And you think there also isn't something that's like charging you to be aware of those shapes and those things. And then you start noticing these patterns and you start noticing the movements and everything. And then on top of it, it's allowing for you to tell some sort of time, and you start to understand season, you start to understand direction and stuff like that. It's almost as if the universe, it's almost as if a higher architect of the universe is speaking to you. So of course, yes, you are going to look at it as, wow, this is something divine. This is something so much bigger than I am. This is something that encompasses my whole life, my whole reality. So why would I not find an importance on it? And guess what? The same thing still does apply to today. I definitely feel that, because no matter what, whenever I look up at the sky, and it doesn't matter, you could be a basic white girl, or you could be a freaking a buff dude or whatever on a full moon, and you look outside, you see that shit, you can't help but stare at that shit and look at it, unless you're just so deeply like entranced in the matrix and you don't give a fuck about anything except for money, cars, and women and shit like that, or whatever, or you're a fucking Fendi bag or whatever and stuff, then whatever, suit yourself. But most people are going to sit there and be like, wow, that is crazy. And guess what? I don't care whether you believe in space, whether you don't believe in space or whatever. We still don't know for ourselves. We don't really know what it is, what's out there, and all that. It's still something very mystical to us. So, with that being said, that's how it was looked at then, and it's still pretty much looked at the same way now. So why not entrance yourself in understanding that there is something so mystical and there is something so divine about it, to this fact that, now what we even to be like, all right, with that type of history, with that type of implication, with that type of feeling that I get from it, and now with knowing certain sciences and even the history of astrology as a science, in the different ways, if you go into those studies and start learning about how astrology was one of the main sciences as well too, now you could even start connecting modern science and being able to look at it and be like, oh, well, I could see now with quantum physics and quantum entanglement and all that, and even what we've been talking about recently with morphic resonance and stuff, how and knowing double slit experiment, all those things, right? I can understand how that type of energy can be projected and somehow be received on our plane of existence that may have some sort of effect, that may have some sort of coding to it, whether it's something that has to do with our DNA, that has something to do with the physical life on Earth, whether it has to do with some sort of thing in the ether, like, with the, different types of chemical bonds, whatever it may be. Like, there is many possibilities. So why not explore that? And if that's the case, even if you're not sure and you don't know, well, then you can start understanding maybe, okay, well, what's the history of these implications of all the different archetypes that were given? What did the ancients say? How did it last through time? Of what was being said about these different celestial movements and these celestial patterns and stuff? How were they even allegorically broken down and put into potentially different types of ancient scriptures and writings and religions, and how they were used for indoctrination or something like that? And then be able to look at your own reflection, your own astrology, and see what part you can be potentially playing to that. And you could actually experiment with that. You can actually see for yourself when it comes to this stuff. So I think that's more of the important thing to look at, because honestly, like, I really do feel like I feel like astrology does help people to be able to study their life's challenges and be able to look at them from a different perspective in order to provide a certain guidance for yourself. The Bible says it too. It recommends searching for answers, but instead of saying like a journey, it says like shit like enlightenment. It uses salvation from sin and stuff like that. But these are things that, once again, you can see once you see the parallels, start decoding those things.
Yeah, beautifully said. Definitely. And that's exactly how I feel. And because of that, right? Like, I look for, I'm big on self-empowerment, right? And that's what we need more nowadays. We've been emphasizing that, especially on the last episode, with Brandon and all that, like his perspective on, the world being a mirror. And and here's where like I split a little bit with the co-creative principle. Like I add this in to the astrological, and I want to emphasize this as we go along in these talks, as we continue on more of the astrological study, that we do have a co-creation principle. That, like, you know, there's people out there that believe in the law of attraction and they believe in manifestation. Well, then, yeah, if you're putting energy out there and those things up there are putting energy down here, then of course there's something going on there where we're co-creating with the energies. And I would see astrology as this self-empowerment tool to know what time it is in the universe, what time it is in your life, what time it is in your family's life. You can look at other people if you learn, and you start to see and psychologically break down. If you're using the more of the Carl Jung approach to astrology, which, by the way, he was a psychologist. Carl Jung, one of the greatest psychologists ever, Big Daddy, psychology. He actually ended up inserting astrology charts into his practice. And because you start seeing the metaphysical build to somebody and you go, wow, this is, like, for example, if I look back on 2020 and I looked at my chart, I had a Saturn return, but then I also had Jupiter come over that. And I was blessed with I know a lot of us were, but with free money. And there were certain aspects, and the way it was in my chart was in the financial house, and I had a lot of help. And so you could look at the global thing and, well, what time is it? The pandemic was basically written in the stars at that point. And then in my life, I saw my second house being basically readjusted. It was being torn apart, really. But then I had Jupiter there, my ruling planet, to help me out. And I saw this archetype play out in my life where I'm like, okay, I'm being taught lessons here, but I'm also being given gifts. And that's what Jupiter does. And I'm sitting there going, wow. So now by knowing what time it is on the energetic clock, I know what it is now that what actions I would most likely need to take. And the more and more you practice it and you see it, whether it is, individual or collective, the more you see that that's what it is. It's the empowerment of awareness. And that's what astrology brings, as long as you are open to it. I also believe in the principle that, the way you see reality and the way that you believe it to work, even if you're, I won't say wrong, but even if it has a skewedness to it or it's not so beneficial, I do believe in my heart that the universe always says yes to that, right? So even if you're subjectively kind of wrong or negative, or that you're seeing things, if you don't believe in something like this, it's going to give you the idea and the signs that it's going to say yes to you. So you're not going to be able to see. Or if you want to go more logically, you could say the RAS kind of turns on, and everything you would need to say that astrology is nonsense, you're going to find it, and that's the same thing with a good example of that is religion, where most people will look at religion and Jesus and the stories of that, and they think that, they believe it so wholeheartedly that they find the evidence somehow. But I do think subjectively, the universe is going to show you as much as it can to make you believe that you are absolutely right. But when you let go of all that stuff, those pre-notions of like, this is right or this is wrong, your subjective truth gets out of the way and it starts to show you other possibilities. And that's what astrology can do for anybody and everybody, as long as you're willing to drop the ego, drop the feel like you need to feel stupid for believing in something like this. Because if you do, I could spit facts all day about how it's not stupid, because I always started at this too, especially when I was working more in the service industry and I was talking to a lot of people, and I would bring this up as I was learning it. It's like, hey, does the moon affects the tides? The sun grows the plants. Like the whole ecosystem of this universe is working together. So why would it be stupid to think that these signs and symbols and archetypes aren't doing anything? And by the way, me being more of this realm earther guy, and you can say flat earther, but this realm earther guy, that's, instead of being in the infinite universe, if everything is this ecosystem and this is the universe, and it's more local than we think it is, that helps it even more, and that's why I've always leaned towards okay, I see the astrology working, and then that would make this over here make sense, and that now they interplay and all of that. But I'm also just entertaining the ideas, and I've let go of my subjective mental paradigms and constructs to think, oh, well, I was right about this. Like, this is stupid. This does whatever. Gio, when we first met and we started talking, right? How open was I about the idea when you were full blown Christian, right? That I never told you that if I disagreed with you or that whatever, I was never like Jesus didn't exist. Whatever. I always just said, I don't know. I think this makes more sense in my eyes, but I never shot down the idea. And I feel like in a way, life has its way of giving you the gifts of being like that by showing you more of the truth or more of the possibilities when you're not so rigid and you're able to have the conversation and you're able to expand your imagination to say, hey, this might be possible. It hasn't been proven wrong. There's enough evidence to say that it might be a thing. And astrology has just that. Like I said at the beginning, as long as you open up that door and you peek in and there's nothing in that skull that's trying to talk shit and block you out of that, and you just kind of embrace it, it shows you. And then when you do, it becomes this beautiful self-empowerment tool that gives you the ability to see deeper into deeper layers of reality in your own life and everything around you. And at that point, it kind of just clicks on the wonder. It clicks on everything. The questions just start going. Like when we first started, right? Your big thing was who invented it? Like where did it come from? That bothers me, right? That was one of your big things. That's why you got into origin points and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was the thing is, and there was answers to those questions where in that case that gave me a little bit more leeway. And that's the thing. It's not like you have to rip off the bandage right away and just be like, oh, well, if I start looking at astrology, that means, and I see the allegorical implications, that means I can't believe in some of this stuff as, say like as Jesus as a person. That's not necessarily true. It's about keeping the awareness to understand that work, that understanding, that what the archetype of Jesus and all those things, like that works within you. That is an activation. That is a coming to, just how the story of Jesus, there is a coming to for Christ and for him to go through a certain journey and stuff like that. It's you. Are you able to embody that as well? Yes, it doesn't have to be so literal in that sort of sense, but there is a lot of implication that Jesus says, like, why do you talk about believing in me and you don't do what I do? You don't do as I say. And that's a big part of it, is because a lot of these people that follow scripture, so to say, so they think that they follow scripture and stuff, and they think just because they believe in the stories and they believe that these things are real and it's a very inspirational story, and they're just looking in that sort of sense, but they're not truly embodying what it means deep within as them, as being part of it, as that story being about them. They think it's about something outside of them that's happening for them rather than something that's happening to them. And that's the major problem. So you can look at fine, you want to be literal with things, go ahead, but make sure you're also seeing how it's an implication towards you. It's a story about you and stuff. It's about the work that you're doing internally as well. And it's funny because I just pulled up a Bible reference too, two different ones, one from Isaiah 11, 1 and 2. It goes, there shall come forth a shoot from the stump of Jesse, and a branch from his shoot shall bear fruit. And the Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, and the Spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord. And then in Galatians, it says, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such things there is no law. And what's crazy is because it references the branch and the branch bearing fruit and stuff too. And like, this is an implication within you as well, that you are the branch. And what's crazy about that too is because when we look at the sign Virgo too, right? And I just said work too. Virgo is the Virgin Mary. Virgin Mary gives birth to Jesus Christ. Virgo is associated with work, sixth house matters, wellness, stuff like that. And one of the constellations of zodiac signs is named after is Virgo. So, but Virgo is also named Alzamach, which means branch. So Jesus in the Bible is the branch that bears fruit, also known as the fruits of the Spirit. So, but yes. So if you look at that as yourself too, and there's many other things, you could go through all the signs, you could go all through those things. These are all things that are embodied already within you too. And it could help you understand those types of way of coming to or overcoming certain things and being fruitful, even with your own with your own inhibitions and ambitions, and learning how to kind of crucify the more superficial side of your mind with certain things, and being able to let go of certain things and get yourself into certain areas. Like this is just one small little fragment of how to even look at that. Like, and that was very vague. Like, but you can look at it in that sort of way. But that's what I'm saying about the fact is like that if you're going to look into this stuff, it's not to just dismiss one thing or the other and just to ultimately find, well, was religion bullshit or whatever and stuff like that. Like if that's the manhunt that you're going on and stuff, then I think you're going to end up going in the wrong direction. Like I get it. Like I'm not an advocate for religion very much and stuff too.
Yes, your fundamentalism.
Yeah, exactly. Like it has its good parts, I guess, here and there and stuff like that. But overall, I think we get lost. We get lost in the purpose and the meaning of it. And I could say the same thing about a lot of these spiritual groups that turn very culty, and even somehow some communities, how they even treat astrology, where it's just like, I just want this predictive pattern thing where I just want to be able to figure out like when to do things and just time it off that, but not really actually do any internal work and have any awareness on myself. It's more so people use the astrology as an excuse to either be a certain way, feel a certain way, act a certain way, like, and just kind of use that as their passive way of just being like, oh, well, the sun's conjunct my sun. So right now, so I could be that way or whatever. Like, the stupid shit like that. Like that's where people get ignorant with it. It's the same way how people get ignorant with religion. So it's like, you gotta be able to separate that and sit with that and be able to understand how to kind of do that. And this is where why we're saying, like, when you look at astrology and these different, in more of like the larger aspect of it, the history of it, how it's being shown and seen in something like the Bible, in other scriptures and texts and stuff, in different cultures too, on top of it, in the mythologies and everything, psychology, and you start branching those all together, then it allows you to be able to work with it more and in a more fundamental way, rather than, taking things literal and just kind of expecting that just some sort of position in the sky is going to activate something and you're just ready for it. No, you have to interact with it and work with it and get yourself ready with it too. What's happening out there needs to happen within here too. That's the same thing. Like they say, there's there's the 12 disciples, there's the 12 zodiacs, there's the 12 cranial nerves and stuff. Like, I think we embody that microcosm within us of the heavenly bodies. Like, it's called the heavenly bodies, the heavenly body, like the overall, the mind of God. Like, well, that mind is also within us too. The little synapses and firing off of neurons in our brain and stuff could be the same thing of like what we see in the cosmos, and the things that we think happen out there, but we don't really know how they work or how they happen. They're happening internally too. And it's looking at this original technology. We're so fascinated, like, especially nowadays, we're so fascinated and so hung up on what the next new thing is and how we can use some sort of new technology to our advantage and stuff like that. But we disregard how it is a replication of our, and I'm a big proponent of this, of our original technology. Like, instead of trying to look at how we could connect with this thing and this sort of new technology and stuff, like, let's learn how to get the technology of our cells to cooperate with one another and use the Wi-Fi there, that internal type of Wi-Fi that we have there, and being able to more intentionally have cells communicating with one another and being able to release certain type of hormones when we know that it's necessary, and become more in tune with our body, become more in tune with our actual technology, rather than trying to do everything on the outside. Just a thought.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because now that you say that, so I think immediately of, how it's being proven over and over again. We live in a fractal universe, right? Like as above, so below, as things that are happening in the solar system as they happen in like the atom and stuff like that, right? So you think like the Earth, is working with vibrations, and whether it's a Wi-Fi signal, like too, because I know it's human made, but like more so like even animals with the way they communicate through vibratory messages and stuff like that, whether it's the geese knowing in their third eye, like something gives them a message to fly south, like they just know through this vibratory field, like, oh, this is what I need to do. Like this is where instinct comes from, right? It's that same intelligence that's digesting your food, shitting it out, beating your heart, telling the animals what to do in each season. Like, do you think they don't have a conscious mind? And I hate when people are like, well, you don't know that. It's like, well, no, you look at their brain. They don't have an inner world the way we do. They have an instinctual world. But what's instinct, right? So like that instinct is what we would call nature. And what's nature, right? Like it has its laws. It has its way. It has the way it works with things. And with that, the astrology ends up interplaying with all of that. And that's the thing, right? Like, because things are the fact that something's beating my heart and that's digesting my food and pumping my blood and all of that makes me think, well, then as above, so below, the body of the universe could be doing things that we don't realize, that because even our cells communicate through vibratory messages, right? Like the cells in my leg know what's going on, not just because a nervous system signal goes through my body, but it's vibratory, right? They're sending out perturbations and the whole body starts to work in unison. How is it when you take something, immediately the whole body knows what to do? Whether it's a medication or whether it's alcohol or whether it's a drug or whether it's food or whatever, the whole body starts working in unison. You're telling me just one shock through the system of your nervous system, it's just no, there's perturbations going on, vibrations. And even if you wanted to talk about the nervous system, it's it's energy, it's vibrations, it's frequencies passing through you to bring messages. So my point on that is fractal universe. If that's going on in the microcosm of my body, what says that can't be going on in the macrocosmic cosmos? Right. So that's the way I have always seen things, is the patterns, right? So if you could see something on the larger scale and know it's probably happening on the smaller scale, and it's always vice versa, because that's just where we live and that's what goes on. And that's proven even with conventional science, So when you were talking before, something came to mind about people who, get into this stuff and they use it as excuses, or they lean on it, or they fight it and they don't want to look at it and stuff like that. The thing is when you really understand the concept of it, and this is a quote, fate is earmarked in tendencies, not in facts. All anyone can see in a birth chart, say with astrology, are tendencies that will become facts if one does not alter them. Right. So for me, that tells me that you can't lean on this. It's a tool. It's a self-empowerment tool. When you're aware of it and you're conscious that this is how the earth works, this is how the universe works. I could see it within my body itself too, that this is how my body works and all of that. When you learn these things, whether it's how the cosmos is or how the health is in your body, you start to become empowered because you have the awareness now to say, hey, this is how this thing works. Astrology just gives you that metaphysical outlook on this is, oh, wow, there's a time and place in the universe right now, and this is where I am. So this is what I could be doing to empower, because that's what we all need to be figuring out right now. And we're, in a way, pushing this out there more and more. And we want to, because of the fact that it is about empowerment. It's also about, it's about bringing that wonder back into about, oh, wow, there's things going on that I didn't realize again. And so to me, you hit with like 10 birds with one stone when it comes to that, right? Like it comes to not only seeing the world completely different, but then the debacle that goes on with religions. That if the origins of religions comes from the sky and it comes from nature and it comes from things that happen in the body, and these allegorical stories are being told to give us these symbols and synchronicities and these deeper parables about ourselves and where we are at, that's empowerment. But then that also removes the religious wars, because now we start realizing that it's all connected and that it's not all literal. Astrology will teach you that, right? So when you start seeing the world in that way, when you start like how I have, and I'm not saying my way is right, but what's benefited me from the way I've seen it is when you're pattern oriented and you're open-minded and you open up to something like astrology, which is the science of synchronicity. everything changes. Everything changes as long as you use it. I mean, like you can learn some health matter, you can learn how to lift weights and all that, but there comes that factor that you can't lean on just the weights. You can't stare at the weights and say, "Oh, I'm going to get big. I'm just going to, yeah, this is how these weights work, and this is how you do it." They're just too heavy. That's why I'm not getting, or they're too light. That's why. No, it's how you're using these things, which ends up giving the benefit, and that's the beauty of seeing it that way. And that's it, to me. I can't get over the fact. Like I always return back to how just beautiful and important this subject is, because it then branches to so many other things. Gio, were you into esoteric sciences before astrology?
No, I was a heavy thinker, but that's what I mean too. I couldn't necessarily, yes, I had a lot of questions and stuff like that, but didn't really know where to look for answers. And, I also, it didn't see that a lot of the answers were already internally available and stuff. And the avenue that brought me into getting those answers was astrology. It did help me piece things more together and know where to look and know where to look within and stuff too, and deal with certain things. Because I mean, I wasn't at a great point in my life too when you met me and when I started going into it and everything too. And when I took that direction of astrology, it actually helped me improve my life because I gained some sort of, real grasp on natural cycles and real grasps on just basically cause and effect and how things work in nature and how that applies to me because I am part of nature. I am a carbon-based human being as well too, but I also am a soul that inhabits this carbon-based body and stuff. So I'm obviously going through certain fluxes as well. So when I came into that and I start to learn more of like that alchemical breakdown of myself and how that even applies to emotions, thoughts, behavioral things, stuff like that, and allowing myself to be open because I was already open by looking at this stuff, but being open to myself to be like, all right, well, I'm not going to just deny that. Yeah, no, I don't do that. I'm not like that, whatever, and stuff like that. Really be honest with myself and then be like, okay, well, what do I need less of? What do I need more of then? How can I provide those things to myself in order to maybe correct some of those thoughts, feelings, behaviors, actions, whatever it may be? And that's what I really contribute to, well, what I really attribute to what helped my life improve dramatically. And honestly, in such a short period of time. I mean, I'm still going through that process constantly.
Yeah.
But that's the thing too that makes me think about, when it comes to astrology as well, what helps you understand it as far as like the scope of reality as well too. And then even like that whole parallel with the Bible, it's like because there is that hang up on, well, there's bad spirits out there and there is evil and there's this negative things and you got to stay away from those things or don't don't pay attention to certain things and whatever. And it's like to a degree, because what I'm realizing too is that even when you do look at the astrology and when you do look at those cycles of nature and stuff too, you do see that there is more of like the darker sides of things. There is more of the hidden workings that are going on, those more scorpionic things and stuff too. But also, you think about the winter months and, the implications that come with those type of zodiacal energies that are going on during those times, during the winter, how everything dies and freezes and it's cold and whatever and stuff. But it's a necessary process for that circle of life to kind of maintain and to go back around. And also it helps you acknowledge the fact that there is a need for hardship in order to gain some sort of better awareness and understanding of self-sustainability and protection in that sort of way, and how to provide for yourself, for others, whatever it may be, and being able to be adaptable to situations well too. Because I think that's the thing is we're here experiencing a human experience in order to learn. And in order to learn something that's going to be inherited more divinely for whatever the next journey is, and who knows how much more rapidly and how much more quickly that happens. And this is why we can't learn it in whatever type of realm or spiritual space that may be. Maybe that's why we are here and we need to learn it. These are things to toss around and stuff too. And I know a lot of people do, think about it in that way and reincarnation and everything. But regardless, so if that's the case, then these negative things, so to say, quote unquote, negative things are necessary processes, but you just have to know how to work with them. How it's the same thing. It's the same thing like we constantly have said about when we see, when there's talks of higher elites and, doing dark occult matters and shit like that and stuff. And it's like you get one thing that says, oh, don't look at them, don't pay any attention to them at all. And then it's like, oh, well, we should acknowledge it and we should try to fight it back and stuff like that. Well, I think there is a balance when it comes to that. It is a necessary part. It also is something that's a cause and effect as well too. But we need to learn rather more so than, ignoring it, trying to act like it's not there. More so understand that it is there. It's in our knowing that we know it's there, but we have to know more so not about it and what's going on with that or what they're doing in that sort of sense. And we have to know what we're doing, what's our role and what's our place and how we're going to, not fall into replicating those things and doing those things. And we start by us, not by trying to, change something outside of us and stuff. We do it within ourselves. We don't give into those lower desires. We learn how to bring that, raise that vibration up, but really understand what that means to raise your vibration and stuff, and how to interact with people in a certain level and stuff that would be more of a heart space frequency that's going to come from more of a place of love or compassion and stuff. And that doesn't mean just be completely tolerant to everybody and everything and stuff too, because that also is not good for your own well-being too. But these are the things that you can learn how to better balance out those parts of nature by looking at the astrology, because there's an axis to every zodiac as well too. And when you see it in more of those in the natural sense, and then you see how too much of one side, you're giving too much weight to one side, how it can have its negative implications and how it brings one thing up and the other one comes down, and what you need to settle out and how you need to inherit both to come to a center when it comes to it. I think that's why when you constantly see Jesus, you see like in a lot of these mosaics in churches, like these old churches that go back long times, when they constantly depict the 12 apostles and stuff in the zodiac wheel basically, and then Jesus in the center. But then you also constantly hear, well, why is I thought Jesus was represented by Pisces and stuff like that too. Well, it's Jesus represents the center point, the embodiment of all, the self, coming into it and being able to have love for each one of those aspects of yourself, noticing that it is yourself, but being able to bring it back inward and balance it out respectively, rather than just being its own individual thing. It's being able to alchemize and harmonize that entire wheel.
Yeah, and to add to the Pisces thing with Jesus too. I mean, you see the Jesus fish everywhere on the back of everyone's car, and you see the archetype play out in his stories and stuff like that. And yeah, it's the all-encompassing sign, right? Like that's what Pisces is. It's the higher, it's the lower, it's the connection to God, it's source and all that. It's seeing things beyond. And it's so funny too, because I forget who I was saying this to, but I thought about it, and even the way the Bible is written is very Piscean, right? It's written in imagery, it's an allegory, it's symbols, it's stuff that's a very Piscean way. It's not direct, it's not Virgo, which is the opposite, right? It's going to just tell you what needs to be done or what it is, and this and that. I just want to get to the point so things can be, they can get done. But when you look at the Pisces archetype and how Jesus even said that he spoke in parables, to me, that's even a Piscean thing to do, because you're being mystical about it. Pisces, water signs, a mystical 12th house, right? Like It's the mystical and imaginative realm of the chart, and Jesus tends to be this embodiment of it. And to me, what just makes it so, what makes it make sense and makes it so useful is, even when you're looking at the biblical side of things, and when you connect the dots to the astrology, you're learning to use your imagination, which is ironic. You have to see through that mystical stuff, and you start to strengthen the way that you see everything, right? Like you step out of logic for a second and you jump into that right side of the brain and you say, oh, wow, there's something more here. You start to investigate, and then you start to see things as symbols and things that are, representing deeper meanings of things, right? Hidden meanings of things. And that's what, in general, like if you learn to read the Bible that way, or you learn to read an astrology chart, that's the thing you start to strengthen. You start to strengthen that ability to see the archetypes play out and things like that. And with Jesus, it is true. Like he is, and it's funny because he was born right at the beginning of the age of Pisces. And now it's going into the age of Aquarius, where Aquarius rules technology and it rules people. I have to change my battery. Mm-hmm. But it rules people, and it rules humanity itself. And that's what now the age of that, right? And that connected to technology. And it's ironic that the way the things are playing out and how the old religions are breaking down, the old structures and systems are breaking down. And it's right on time. It's right. Like if you're looking at the sky clock, it's right on time. And so then instead of worrying about an apocalypse, or you're worrying about we're at nuclear war, the government's going to, control us all and this and that, like, yeah, bad things will and can happen. That was the point of me reading that little quote before, right? That fate is earmarked in tendencies, not in facts. So these things now are in someone who's studying this stuff, it's in the awareness now, right? It's like, oh, okay, I can now see these things playing out. I don't know the absolute outcome because it's not fully predictive. It's not Nostradamus or whatever. It's not trying to say this is what's going to happen, but this is the tendencies, and this is what's in the soup and the ether that's formulating everything around us right now. And that's, to me, where I get the most benefit. And I think anybody else listening, if you're already not into it, I'm sure if you're listening to this, there's going to be a good chance that you are into this. But we're basically stepping on the soapbox here, like we're stepping on the podium and saying, hey, we want to speak out for more of this stuff because this is what brought us in. This is what made us see. This is what opened our minds to, Gio was a full-blown Christian, went to church and all of that, and was a completely different type of person until he stepped into this, and I watched it. Me personally came from a different angle where I was kind of more on, I won't say the atheistic, I was never that stupid, but I always saw it as, and yes, it's really stupid to be an atheist, but like it's for me, it came from more of the, like, I have questions because things don't make sense. And you start to just change, and it's beautiful. And it's a beautiful thing that anybody should do, whether you're male, female, whether you're, an Instagram bitch, or you're this flexing fucking working out. Like it's not, this is just as masculine or just as intelligent as, probably more than anything, because it's a holistic science, and the proof is in the pudding. And as we go along with every episode, I'm sure if you continue to listen and embark on the journey with us, that you'll see that. Gio, speak on that, because I'm going to change my
Yeah, exactly. No, because it made me think of something that I was thinking about earlier today. That was leading up to this conversation, was like, I mean, look at where we're at now. Like, look at the light that's been shed on these types of topics more so, and how they have so much more popularity now. And and there's no denying, when you look at it from where we were, even 10 years ago or so to versus now, like there has been a mass awakening that's happened. And yes, there has been a lot of turmoil that has caused this uprooted, feeling of stability and stuff too that's happened, which you can definitely look at, the past transits and stuff we've had, Uranus and Taurus and all that, the nodal structures and stuff that have really amplified this even more. But it's not even about that. What I'm saying is that this matches perfectly with the sky clock, like you were just saying before, because this is gaining more of awareness, whereas like the last time astrology had some sort of like real momentum and stuff was during the 60s, and not to this degree, not to this level and stuff, but there was certain astrological implications. And it's like it goes to show that it's like, is there something that happens psychologically or within the DNA or something within the field that's activated during specific times that allows people to come into a higher awareness and stuff if they have sustained themselves in a certain way and stuff too? Because no matter what, like now, even if it's not even astrology, you have seen that so many people have become aware of certain things. They've become aware of what they're consuming. They've become aware of the different types of lifestyles and how they're toxic that we're being that are being projected onto us to be like, oh, like it's so normalized to be this way and to do these things, like it's okay. But people are being more conscientious about their health, being more conscientious about their daily activities, their social media activity, more conscientious about their bodies and the type of foods that they eat and what's in food that's being produced for us and stuff. And now becoming more aware and wanting to grow their own food and produce, like, and just overall change certain things and how they want to raise their kids. Like, this is enough proof, and you can use the astrology, and which we'll do eventually. Like, we'll go into this and stuff too. Like, a lot of people say, well, big, because it's the dawning of the age of Aquarius, and it's like, that's just, there is an Aquarian energy to it and stuff too. But like, once again, like, let's not fall back into the basic roots that basically happened in the 60s, because in the 60s it got real. But a lot of people think that's a psyops too. That happened was that the whole hippie movement and stuff like that was started by the CIA, and by
Tavistock.
allowing drugs into it, and a lot of LSD and stuff like that, the whole MK Ultra thing and stuff, and basically getting people to lose their fucking shit and not gain any sort of way or traction with this. Where now we have more of a stability, where it's like, yes, you do see a lot of the ayahuasca, DMT act and mushroom activists, who are talking about this as a part of, um, tapping into this other sense of self, and seeing more in a deeper, spiritual light, who the fuck you are and where you really are and stuff. But there's more of a discipline to it now. There's more of a control to it now. There's more of an advocacy for that type of discipline and control and stuff. And then, like I said, it's the whole, you know, understanding and the allegorical breakdowns of different, of different religions and the Bible, and even, different types of sciences and stuff, and making certain connections and getting more into the metaphysics. You see that this has been on a rapid upswing and stuff too, and it has so much momentum right now. And I think that what we need to be concerned with is not necessarily, oh, how is evil going to take this over or something in that sort of way? Or how do I make sure that I'm on this enlightened path? I don't want to get left behind, whatever it may be. It's not that. It's like, you need to understand and come to terms and ground with it. And me and Ray have this experience with so many people in our life where they don't really think much of astrology. They don't think it's bullshit. But then when something happens, or you get that moment of time to kind of, it's something about them, and, or something that they're experiencing, and you kind of point out the obvious with the astrology that's going on and what it means, even if they don't even tell you what's going on with themselves, and somehow you hit it on the head with them, and they're like, whoa. Or like, you get that comment out of the blue, like, what's going on with the universe? Because you know why? Something still is initiated within them during these times. Something is activated right now within them that they have an inkling. It's just whether or not they're going to feed that inkling. And the same goes for anybody that's listening too. It's like, if you have that feeling, you have that certain intuition, don't ignore it. You want to tap into it. You want to bring into that. And that's why we're bringing this importance when it comes to astrology, because astrology helps be that gateway to that further activation, to go into that intuition, without having to, necessarily, if you do things that are kind of the right way and don't fall into the clickiness of astrology, and don't fall into the, oh, what's this person saying about me, but really learn the arts of it, learn the science of it, learn the background of it, learn those things, and then learn how to actually read it as a language, as a cosmic language, and apply it to understanding your cosmic language, then you really can bring it to the next level and keep going and have a further understanding. And a lot of things won't surprise you as much anymore. You'll feel better prepared and more adept to certain situations, and it'll give you this sort of encouragement and this empowerment and this willingness to stand against things, but also feel as a co-creator with the universe. Not that shit's just going to happen. It's just going to happen to you. Like that, there is a way for you to redirect the energy once it passes to you.
Yeah, and it's funny. Most people, from my experience, where we get them the most is the manifestation synchronicity thing, where they're thinking about something, or that like it's almost like you say something and it happens, or they see patterns in their life, and that's that inkling that you're talking about, right? Like people start noticing it. It's like, wait a minute, there's something going on here. Like, why is it I'm always getting this result, or why am I always, there's always this cycle that my life's going through. I have a specific friend who I watch his cycle, and then I, like, at times, if I have enough time, because when you're studying astrology, and one of the best things to do is not only look at your own chart, but look at the people close to you and observe what's going on in their life. So then you can, so when you're having conversations, like you were saying, something clicks in your head and you're going, oh yeah, you're having that Mars square with your sun, or you're having that, Saturn's over your moon right now. Now, your emotions are probably being blocked. Sometimes you don't say it to those people, but you watch and you're like, oh man, but if you don't even want to like pitch this to family members or friends, or you're trying to just sell things to people, to make it look like you're selling something to them, when it comes to even an idea like or a concept or a science like astrology, the manifestation thing is really what opens the door too for most people, right? Like they'll see the synchronicity. Quick story: I was working in a sub shop, and I was just given a managing job, and it was 3 stores that we had bought. And within the 3 stores, we had, like the 3 managers, me and the other 2, worked in the same store because our boss had bought other stores. And so we were appointed the beautiful job of, managing basically kids in a sub shop. But with that, and Gio, you got front row seat. Like, how fun is that, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So, but regardless of that, the whole point with the synchronicity thing, I'm sitting there with my cousin, and we have another guy, and I'm like, bro, we're like the 3 Stooges, like, and I'm just fucking around and just joking around. And I said something along the lines of that. I'm like, we're like the 3 Stooges of the sandwich life or whatever. And within about, I give it 15 to 20 seconds, that quick, customer comes in, guy looking at the menu. He's, how you guys doing? This and that. He's like, just give me a second. And he's looking, and he unzips his jacket. And what shirt does he have on? It's the 3 Stooges. This is a shirt with the 3 Stooges. I had just said it. And to me, it's those moments and that's what got them, right? So now, like, even my cousin, who's very, another hyperlogical, Mars and Taurus, right? Get to the point. I just want to get work done. I don't have time to think about this shit. I talk to him regularly, and Ramon, the universe. Am I allowed to call myself Ramon, by the way? Am I referring to anybody
who knows
important that I shouldn't be comparing myself to right now?
Biblical
Razor Ramon. Any Razor Ramon fans out there? It's just a nickname. Anyway, so but it got them, right? And now, so like, when it's funny when you see these people catch on and they see the signs and the synchronicities, and that's not an RAS thing. I'm sorry. My brain was not looking for 3 Stooges. It was put right in front of my face. I couldn't even not see it. I couldn't unsee it. I could not see it. It was there. The universe was going, what's up? How you doing? Like, I heard you just say that, and how that aligns, whatever, that's a whole other concept. But everyone, well, how does it work? Don't worry about how it works at first. Worry about just how you think. That's our pitch with that, is like, be open-minded, be ready to digest some new concepts, because astrology is a damn beautiful thing. But you get people with that manifestation stuff, like it's, and you know what? I guess I kind of skewed the truth on, I saw The Secret and was like, oh, wow, I attract things into my life and this and that. And that led me to Zeitgeist. And that's what, but Zeitgeist got me into astrology, where The Secret woke me up. And I think it woke a lot of people up because you get excited. You're like, oh, yeah, the universe is talking, and then you manifest. And that's what gets a lot of people. It's what got me to really think and open my mind and even get out of the conspiracy thing for a while. I'm like, oh, shit, if I focus on negative stuff all the time, if the law of attraction says you basically what you think about and you feel about, you bring about, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't focus on all that negative bullshit all the time. But then that's the thing, that the mind is now primed to see the synchronicity. And then when you're ready for that, and then you look at a science like astrology, an art and science like astrology, you start realizing there's a science to synchronicity. And it's not just some RAS bullshit. That is a thing. You buy a car, then you see that car. But yeah, because thousands of people own that fucking car that you probably bought. So of course there's that chance that your RAS is going to pick it up because it's out there. But when you see a synchronicity like the Three Stooges and whatever, like, and all little shit like that, that's not RAS. That's something's talking to you. And when you realize that, life is damn beautiful again, because you start realizing that there's more and that you can wonder about more, and there's more that you can start. It's like you have a fresh mind again. You can learn as long as you're open to it. And I promise anybody, you say yes to this, or you say yes to anything along the esoteric or the, just thinking bigger and flat earth, right? Like, just open your mind to those things. Doesn't mean you have to believe them, but you will be shown the way as long as you get out of the way. And that's the whole concept of, if you think correctly, and that doesn't mean, oh, well, I pick Republican, Democrat, or astrology is good or astrology is bullshit. Jesus existed, didn't. It's not what I'm saying when I say think correctly. I'm saying, how are you thinking about it? Meaning, what's your approach? Where's your logic, your facts, your wisdom, the things that you gather for you to really formulate that idea and say, okay, this is what I believe, or this is what I know. So it's our job, I think, because we do it to ourselves all the time. And I think that's the gift that we have to give to people, is just because the way we've trained our thought process and the discipline of not falling into beliefs and being able to deal with the insecurity of I don't know, which most people don't like, by the way. And when you've disciplined yourself and built that muscle up, then you have just a whole new world to live in. And it begins to be magical and talks back to you. And that's my sell on it. There's my Gemini pitch for astrology. Mm-hmm. And it's not a pitch because I really mean it. And and one more thing, and I'll let you get in, but on the other end, when we're talking about even manifestation, this is why I saw transurfing is so important, because the principles even in that says, this is just a model to manifest, and however you see the world is how it's going to be mirrored right back to you. But in my eyes, there's that truth in that. But then there's also, but if you get out of the universe's way, if you get your ego out of the way of that manifestation process and you allow the universe to give you things, you'll be given things that are objectively true. Objective as the sun coming up and going down and the moon coming up and the stars being in the sky every night and you breathing air and your heart beating and this and that, and these things that naturally are objective. You can't say that they don't work or don't exist. Those things are objective. That's the one little bit of thing I have with, say, anybody who believes in they create reality is, well, no, there's a limitation to that. And so there's something that's saying that there's laws in here, and I believe the stars, or I know that the stars are part of that objective, etheric, metaphysical law that partially governs, and we have the ability to have a party with it and have fun with it, whether it's something challenging and something negative and quote unquote, or something positive and good and to something to embrace. So it's a beautiful thing. I can't wait to get further and further into this. And it has become literally part of my lifestyle. It's part of who I am. It's part of who Geo is, and recommended to anyone. And if you're already into astrology, you know the deal. And so we're going to have a good time talking about all the signs, planets, theology, mythology, and all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And no matter what, it's always going to revert back to how you can, it's going to look a little different for each person and stuff when we get into more of, the deeper aspects of certain archetypes and everything too. And, there's only so many, examples or references that we can give, but then that's where you have to lean into it. That's where you have to feel into it. Like, it's not about trying to find out. This is why I like astrology as an entry level to, truth seeking, even just self-acknowledgement, self-seeking and stuff like that, like more than manifestation type stuff, more than anything else, is because I feel like it has a little bit more of a groundedness that doesn't have so much of, don't get me wrong, it's there. Like I said before, the clickiness, it could turn into like a cult like thing. It could turn very religious.
Anything can, by the
A
way.
lot of people started doing that with spirituality, like
Yeah.
where they literally fashioned it into whatever religion that they just got out of, basically, and stuff too. They started doing the same shit with it. And that's, yes, of course, stay aware, be careful, don't do that and stuff. This is why in our earliest shit that we were talking about when we were doing the daily transcendence, our first few episodes, we were big and big and big and big on the whole deprogramming, like being able to kind of like come out of that space of bias, trying to come out of that space of judgment, and coming out of and trying to understand why you think the way you think and stuff. Where did those come from? The habits, the thoughts and ideas and everything. And I still think that's a big part of it, to really make sure that you kind of cleanse those things from yourself, especially getting into this area, or even if you've been in this area already, like always have to do a wellness check with yourself. I think no matter what, like me and Ray constantly do it too with ourselves. And, we've had to step back and stuff too, to really get into that. It comes to a point where you can't just go and try to find the answers to everything and be like, oh, well, I know this. And it's like, that this is going to be a definite answer, because if you're already going into something with the expectation that that's going to be the answer, then you may be closing yourself off to other ideas to help you build upon said answer, like that. There could be more to it that you need to kind of come into, where rather more so it's like allow that to come in, but also allow, buffer up your intuition. I think that's another big thing, is like you have to be able to allow it to process and resonate with your own intuition, with your own spiritual side and your own implications and stuff, like your inclinations, I should say, more so your spiritual inclinations, how to really get that to sit with it, and that will really, I feel like, open you up more than all the other things, to be able to get you to be like, oh, okay, because you're already starting off, especially when you're looking at yourself through the lens of astrology, you're already faced with the challenge of having to look at yourself honestly, without denying certain things, without overinflating certain things, and just being able to look at it from a balanced and a hermetic standpoint, and being like, okay, yeah, I have that tendency. Yep, I am, something like that. And like that will kind of train you to be able to look at other areas eventually when you go into, whether it's, certain, even the conspiracies, or, certain types of methodologies of things, or the occult, whatever it may be, other esoteric matters,
Religions.
Yes, religions. Like it'll get you'll at least have that practice and that training of how to try to remain as most unbiased as possible as you can be and stuff. You're always going to have some sort of bias still within you and stuff too, but like it'll get you to be able to acknowledge, at least you can acknowledge when you're having that bias, and then being able to self-correct that shit. So that's one thing, that when it comes to the whole, the entry level to it and stuff too. But it's going to look a little bit differently, and that's where, like I was saying before, like when we get into some of the more rooted things, especially when it comes to the planets, the signs, the different transits, archetypes and stuff, come into the awareness of understanding, where your placements are, where your chart is, and when we start expressing more so of these these types of energies and the archetypes and everything, like you're gonna have to use that intuition side and feel into it and see more so how it can be embodied or replicated, or how it shows up within yourself too, and different aspects of yourself. It could show up physically, it could show up mentally, it could show up emotionally. It can, you have to keep your radar on for all those different areas and stuff too. Yes, a lot of the certain elements and certain areas and stuff will kind of show you where that's going to show up most of the time, those energies. But still, doesn't mean you just close yourself off. Well, it's only physical things. It's Taurus. It's only material things like Taurus. It's only money. That's where you take the blinders off. Try to go into it, taking the blinders off. And I'm looking forward to it, because it's not just something that I think is going to be beneficial to other people. Because also we have had a lot of people that, that said that they're like, they wanted sources from us as far as like where we learned astrology and stuff like that. Like, yeah, we've had our teachers and stuff like that, but when it comes down to it, it's been learning through application, and yeah, I definitely think where we're going to go down the road, this will help a lot of people. If you're familiar with the glyphs, if you're familiar with the signs, if you're familiar with the planets and stuff like that, this will help get a better understanding of each thing and being able to, put those puzzle pieces together and then apply it to self, and that's kind of how we want to take it.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, I think not much else has to be said. Mm-hmm. This is basically, you said an entry point. This is an entry point into the next while, like how we did with morphic resonance, where we want to ride into a subject, and whether it's bringing our own views and it's also bringing the facts, we will talk about sources that we have. And we're also always students of this. We're always learning as we go. New things can come up, and that inspires us to maybe want to make episodes and stuff like that. Lately, I've used the deduction theory on, like, and talk about Taurus and value and resources and being resourceful is like, what's really useful in all of this stuff. And, that was the whole preaching thing we had about the conspiracy and about the whatever. It's like, and the importance, by the way, of explaining something like morphic resonance was kind of like a little backdoor thing into like saying, hey, consciousness is affected non-locally by things that we can't see and can't, that we don't think as, like we're affecting each other or we're being affected by energies and stuff. Astrology, right? Yeah, morphic resonance, right? So like that's another thing. And so we've been priming ourselves, we've been priming you who've been listening, and now it's time to go really deep into what all these things mean. And then also, as we go along, we'll not only hit charts, we'll hit signs, planets, aspects, what everything means. Teach ourselves and you guys in the process more and more and more as we go along. And then on top of that, what I'm most excited about always is the archetypal mythological expressions and the science of that synchronicity popping through stories and movies and this and that, and things that were not planned out by an elite cabal and all of that, but that just happened naturally, and the beauty of the universe and our connection with it. And that's what this is all. I have a feeling this is what this all leads to, is that the more you go down this path and the more that you just acknowledge the fact that there are evil, negative things, or that there are things that are being used in a bad way for self-serving purposes and all of that, that's all there. And I think we all have enough evidence at this point, and that's okay. And we have those people that are going to cover that stuff. And eventually, if we have to, we do. But on the other end, it's more about the empowerment factor, the connection back to the universe, the connection back to nature, seeing how beautiful life is, all of that stuff.
And back connected with the natural sciences, like really being able to bring that stuff back. Because if you could paint a better picture for yourself when it comes to looking into these areas and these archetypes and everything, and you could really kind of embody and embrace the story and stuff, but put yourself in the driver's seat of it and stuff, that's where the empowerment actually occurs and happens. It's not about who the story is about of of Achilles or what, like, it's how are you Achilles? How are you
right.
every role in that? How are you the main character of every role in that? And how do you embody that? And how do you think that you don't, but actually you do? Because when you can see that, and you could really see that, and you could get into the psychology of it and really look into the depths of your own psychology by even looking at your personal chart, opens up all the doors.
And astrology opens this door to see things this way. And it starts to make your brain holistic again and whole again. And you become whole as a person again, and connected to everything once more. And it brings this new vibrancy, even through the darkest of times. So I'm excited. Gio, I know you're excited. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure that's really it. Do
Big
you have
time.
anything else to add before we log off?
No, that's it. I mean, I just think if anybody, as far as listening, like this is, and I know there was people that wanted, we got hit up on Instagram, somebody asking like, how can I really learn how to like look at my birth chart? And it's like, yeah, you could take a course. There's many different teachers and stuff like that. And it's tough. It's tough to say just one person or the other because everybody has a lot of these different teachers and stuff and that we've followed and looked at different books and stuff. Like they all have their different certain expressions and takes on
Explore.
things. But yeah, go into multiple. Just don't get hung up on one thing or one person or one way of doing it. Like get the basics down and being able to look to eventually kind of you know uh compact a little bit of those ideas together and stuff too. But also this journey that we're going on, if you want to learn and really learn in a certain way of really breaking down those signs, those planets, those archetypes, the functions and all that stuff, and then even just how it allegorically and parallels and the synchronicities to other things to really get a further grasp on it, like this is going to be a series for you. Like this will really help you get into that. So in the meantime, try to learn the glyphs, try to learn the signs and a little bit in that sort of way and learn your chart. Be able to know how to pull up your chart. If you like be able to look at that thing, be able to see it and stuff too, because then you'll be able to work with it.
Well, on that note, we thank you again for listening. And I guess until next time.